Hello there and welcome to the Sleepy Science channel. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've been wondering about the nature of your own thoughts, or perhaps you're simply ready to let the questions fade into something softer, something gentler. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most beautiful mysteries in all of existence: consciousness itself. That quiet awareness sitting behind your eyes right now, the one noticing these words, noticing the weight of your body against the sheets, noticing the soft rhythm of your breathing. It's been with you every moment of your life, and yet it remains one of the universe's most elegant puzzles. Before we begin this journey together, if you're enjoying this quiet space we're creating, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. It helps others find their way here too, to this peaceful corner of the internet where science meets wonder, where facts become lullabies. But there's no pressure at all. You can just settle in, adjust your pillow one last time, and let yourself sink a little deeper into comfort. Tonight's exploration is different from our usual cosmic wanderings through space or deep ocean mysteries. Instead, we're turning inward, toward the most intimate mystery of all, the fact that you exist as an experiencing being. We'll drift through neuroscience and philosophy, through quantum whispers and evolutionary tales, through moments of awareness so subtle they almost disappear into themselves. Each fact is a soft stepping stone across a quiet stream, and you don't need to remember any of them. They're simply here to guide you gently towards sleep, like fireflies leading you through a summer night. So take a deep breath in and out. Let your shoulders drop just a little. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. For the next little while you can simply listen or half listen or drift in and out of these words like waves touching shore. Your consciousness, that extraordinary gift you've had since birth, will take care of the rest. Let's begin. Your consciousness may be arising from billions of tiny electrical whispers happening in the dark cathedral of your skull right now. Scientists estimate that approximately 86 billion neurons are firing in gentle cascades, creating the experience of you reading these words, feeling the softness of your pillow, existing as a point of awareness in the universe. Each neuron connects to thousands of others, forming a network so complex that it contains more possible connections than there are stars in the known cosmos. And somehow, from this biological symphony of electricity and chemistry, emerges the seamless feeling of being you, unified, continuous, aware. It's like an orchestra where billions of instruments play together so perfectly that you hear only one beautiful song, the song of your own existence, playing softly through the night. The word consciousness itself comes from the Latin consciere, meaning to know together, or to be privy to. There's something poetic about that origin, as if consciousness was always understood as a shared secret, a knowing that happens not in isolation but in relationship with the world, with your own thoughts, with this very moment. Your awareness right now is doing exactly what the ancient Romans suggested. It's knowing alongside reality, bearing witness to the gentle rise and fall of your breath, the softness of darkness beyond your eyelids, the quiet hum of night. You are consciousness knowing itself, a universe becoming aware of its own existence through the particular lens of your life, your body, your story unfolding in this exact moment of cosmic time. There exists what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, the question of why physical processes in the brain should give rise to subjective experience at all. Why doesn't the brain simply process information in darkness, without anyone home to witness it? Why is there something it feels like to be you? This question, posed by philosopher David Chalmers, remains beautifully unanswered. Scientists can map which brain regions light up during different experiences, can trace neural pathways with remarkable precision, but the leap from matter to mind, from neurons to the felt quality of watching sunset colors or tasting honey or feeling peaceful as you drift toward sleep, that leap remains mysterious, and perhaps wonderfully so. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved but simply held gently, like holding a sleeping child. Your conscious experience may actually be happening slightly in the past. Studies suggest that what you perceive as now is actually about 80 milliseconds behind reality, a brief delay while your brain collects sensory information and assembles it into the smooth, continuous experience of the present moment. Your consciousness, in its kindness, stitches together these tiny fragments into something seamless, editing out the gaps and delays so that life feels fluid and immediate. Right now, as you listen to these words, your awareness is performing this invisible magic, creating the illusion of a single, unified present moment. It's like watching a film. You see smooth motion, but it's really just many still frames passing quickly enough to fool the eye. Your consciousness is both the filmmaker and the audience, creating and witnessing your life in the same breath. The brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy despite making up only 2% of your body weight, and much of that energy fuels the elaborate processes of consciousness. Even now, as you rest quietly, your brain is working, monitoring your breathing, regulating your heartbeat, processing sounds from the environment, maintaining your sense of self, keeping the gentle flame of awareness burning through the night. It never truly rests, this 3-pound universe inside your head. But its nighttime work is different from daytime effort, softer, more concerned with repair and consolidation, with sorting through the day's experiences and deciding what to keep. Your consciousness during sleep shifts into different modes, different rooms of the same vast house, exploring territories that waking awareness never visits, dreaming in languages that logic cannot speak. There's a beautiful concept in neuroscience called integrated information theory, which suggests that consciousness arises whenever a system integrates information in a particular way, not just processing it, but weaving it together into something unified and irreducible. According to this theory, consciousness isn't binary, isn't something you either have or don't have, but exists on a spectrum. A thermostat might have a tiny whisper of consciousness, integrating information about temperature. A mouse might have more. A human being, with our elaborate cortex folding in on itself, might have even more. Vast cathedrals of integrated information creating the rich, textured experience of being human. And right now, your consciousness is integrating the feeling of tiredness, the softness of these words, the gentle pull of sleep, all into one seamless moment of experience. Consciousness may have evolved as a survival mechanism hundreds of millions of years ago, a way for organisms to create internal models of the world detailed enough to predict and navigate threats. The first glimmers of awareness might have been simple, a primitive creature becoming conscious of light, of danger, of food. Over evolutionary time, this awareness deepened and complexified, adding layers like sediment-forming rock. By the time consciousness reached human beings, it had become something extraordinary, not just awareness of the external world but awareness of itself. Consciousness folding back on itself like a mirror reflecting a mirror, creating infinite regress. You are the universe's way of looking at itself, evolved over billions of years from stardust to cells to this quiet moment of self-reflection as you lie in bed, aware that you are aware. Your sense of self, that feeling of being a continuous person with a history and a future, may be one of consciousness's most elaborate constructions. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio suggests that the self is built in layers, starting with the proto-self, a basic representation of your body's internal state, then adding the core self, which gives you the feeling of being a sentient being in this moment, and finally the autobiographical self, which weaves together your memories and identity into a coherent narrative. What feels like a solid, unchanging you is actually a story your brain tells itself, updated constantly, edited seamlessly. You are both the author and the protagonist of your own life story, and right now, this story is gently approaching the chapter where the protagonist drifts into peaceful sleep, letting go of the day's plot threads. Some philosophers and scientists wonder if consciousness might be fundamental to the universe itself, not something that emerges from matter but something that exists alongside it, like space or time. This view, called panpsychism, suggests that even elementary particles might have some infinitesimal spark of consciousness, and that human awareness is what happens when the universe arranges itself in a particularly complex way. It's a poetic thought, that consciousness isn't produced by the brain but perhaps channeled through it, the way a television receives signals rather than creating them. Whether or not this is true, there's something comforting about the idea that awareness is woven into the fabric of reality itself, that you are made of the same fundamental substance as stars and stones and the space between them, all of it aware in its own way. The phenomenon called blind sight reveals how consciousness and perception can separate in fascinating ways. Some people with damage to their visual cortex report being completely blind in part of their visual field, unable to consciously see anything there. Yet if you ask them to guess where an object is in that blind region, they guess correctly far more often than chance would predict. Their brain is processing visual information, but consciousness isn't receiving the message. They see without seeing, perceive without awareness. This strange condition suggests that consciousness is like a spotlight moving across the vast stage of mental processing, illuminating only a small portion of what your brain actually does. Right now, your consciousness is focused here, on these words, but beneath awareness, your brain is managing thousands of processes, breathing, digesting, dreaming, preparing for sleep, all happening in the darkness beyond the spotlight's glow. Meditation practices thousands of years old were perhaps humanity's first scientific investigations into consciousness, systematic experiments in altering and observing awareness from the inside. Modern neuroscience has begun to validate what contemplative traditions have known, that consciousness is malleable, trainable, capable of profound change. Brain scans of experienced meditators show altered patterns of activity in regions associated with attention, self-awareness, and emotional regulation. The practice of watching your own thoughts without getting caught in them, of observing the breath, of resting in pure awareness. These techniques can physically reshape the brain. Your consciousness is not a fixed entity but a living process, capable of growth and transformation. And even if you've never meditated, the simple act of lying here, noticing your breathing, watching thoughts drift by like clouds, this too is a form of training, a gentle befriending of your own awareness. Dreams are perhaps consciousness's strangest expression. A nightly theater where the rules of waking reality dissolve into surreal narratives and impossible geometries. During REM sleep, your brain becomes almost as active as when you're awake, yet consciousness takes on a different quality, more fluid, more symbolic, less bound by logic or physics. You might fly or speak to people who are simultaneously themselves and someone else entirely, or find yourself in places that morph and shift. The ancient Greeks believed dreams were messages from the gods. Modern science suggests they may be the brain's way of processing emotions and consolidating memories, but the full purpose of dreaming remains beautifully uncertain. Soon, your consciousness will slip into this other world, and whatever adventures await there, strange or mundane, remembered or forgotten, they're another expression of the mystery of awareness, playing in different keys through the night. The phenomenon of anesthesia remains somewhat mysterious even to modern medicine. When you undergo general anesthesia, you don't simply fall asleep. Your consciousness appears to switch off entirely, leaving hours-long gaps in your experience where nothing exists at all. Upon waking, it's as if no time has passed, as if you blinked and the surgery was over. Scientists aren't entirely certain how anesthetic drugs accomplish this, how they can so reliably turn the light of consciousness off and then back on. It's a humbling reminder that despite our technological sophistication, we're still learning the basic mechanisms of awareness. But there's something reassuring too, that consciousness is resilient, that it can disappear completely and then return, like the sun after a long night, reliable and warm and ready to illuminate another day of being you. Your conscious attention can typically hold only about 4 to 7 items in working memory at once, a limitation that shapes your entire experience of reality. Right now, you might be aware of these words, the sensation of your pillow, perhaps a sound from outside, the feeling of drowsiness, and that's approaching the limit of what consciousness can hold simultaneously. Everything else fades into the background, into the unconscious processing that happens beyond awareness. This narrowness of conscious focus isn't a flaw but a feature, protecting you from overwhelm, allowing you to navigate the world by highlighting what's important and letting the rest blur into soft periphery. As you drift toward sleep, your conscious focus narrows further still, releasing its grip on sensory details, on planning and thinking, narrowing down to almost nothing. A gentle funnel guiding you from waking awareness into the different consciousness of dreams. The ancient question, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Is really a question about consciousness and observation. The falling tree creates vibrations in air molecules. That's physics. But sound as an experienced phenomenon, as something heard and known, requires consciousness to receive and interpret those vibrations. In this way, consciousness is what transforms the universe from a collection of particles and forces into a world of colors and sounds and textures and meanings. Your awareness is the bridge between objective reality and subjective experience, between what is and what it feels like to be. Right now, the darkness of your room exists as electromagnetic waves, but consciousness makes it into the felt quality of night, soft and safe and perfect for sleeping. Babies may not develop full self-consciousness until around 18 months of age, which scientists test using the mirror test, placing a dot on an infant's forehead and seeing if they recognize it as being on themselves when looking in a mirror. Younger babies see the mirror baby as another child. Older ones realize that's me and reach for their own forehead. This moment marks the emergence of self-awareness, the beginning of knowing yourself as a separate entity in the world. Before this, a baby's consciousness might be more like a pure stream of sensations and feelings without a clear subject at the center. Some spiritual traditions suggest this pre-self-conscious state is actually closer to enlightenment, that we spend our lives trying to return to the pure awareness we had before the self solidified. Either way, your consciousness has traveled a long journey from those early days, and tonight it can rest from the effort of being a self, softening those boundaries as you drift toward sleep. Consciousness appears to be unique to certain types of brain structures, particularly complex arrangements of neurons capable of forming what scientists call recurrent loops, information flowing back on itself, creating feedback. This architecture allows the brain to not just process information, but to monitor its own processing, to be aware that it is aware. Simple computers can process vast amounts of data without any consciousness arising, because they lack these self-referential loops. Your brain, by contrast, is constantly talking to itself, creating cascades of neural activity that circle back, creating the strange loop of awareness. The observer observing itself observing. It's a bit like standing between two mirrors and seeing your reflection reflected infinitely into the distance. Right now, you are aware of these words about awareness, and you can be aware that you are aware of them. Consciousness experiencing itself experiencing something, a beautiful infinity in the finite space of your skull. The question of whether other animals possess consciousness like ours remains open, though evidence increasingly suggests that many creatures experience some form of subjective awareness. Elephants recognize themselves in mirrors. Crows solve complex problems and seem to plan for the future. Octopuses, with their distributed intelligence and alien neurology, demonstrate problem-solving that suggests an inner life quite unlike ours, but perhaps no less aware. Even insects might have some basic form of consciousness, a tiny flame of what it is like to be ness. If this is true, then the universe is far more conscious than we usually imagine, awareness flickering in countless forms across the planet. From the depths of oceans to the heights of forest canopies, each creature aware in its own way. You share the gift of consciousness with a community of other beings, all of you experiencing this strange miracle of existence from different perspectives, under the same moon that watches over all the world's dreams tonight. You're doing beautifully. Just let these thoughts wash over you like gentle waves. There's no need to hold on to any of them. Your consciousness is slowly changing modes now, shifting from active attention toward the softer awareness of sleep. Notice how your body feels heavy and comfortable. Notice how thinking requires a bit more effort now, how easy it is to let the ideas drift past without grasping. This is exactly right. Your breathing is steady and calm. The night is holding you safely. There are many more facts to explore, but they'll come to you gently, like snowflakes landing softly, and you don't need to catch any of them. Just rest and listen, or don't listen, and let yourself drift wherever feels most comfortable. The strange phenomenon called déjà vu, the feeling that you've experienced this exact moment before, may be a brief glitch in consciousness, a momentary confusion in the brain's systems for marking time and familiarity. For just a moment, new experience gets tagged as memory, creating the uncanny sensation that the present is repeating. Most people experience this a few times a year, a little hiccup in the usually seamless flow of awareness through time. It's a reminder that your sense of past, present, and future is constructed, that consciousness actively creates the experience of temporal flow. Time might be more fluid than it feels, more subjective. Some physicists even question whether time passes at all or whether consciousness creates that illusion, transforming the static four-dimensional universe into a moving story. But you don't need to worry about any of that now. Just let yourself flow with time's current, drifting gently toward sleep. Consciousness might operate partly through quantum processes and structures called microtubules inside neurons, according to a controversial theory proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. They suggest that quantum coherence, the strange behavior of particles that can be in multiple states at once, might play a role in generating subjective experience. Most neuroscientists remain skeptical, noting that the brain seems too warm and wet for delicate quantum effects to survive. But the idea is enchanting, suggesting that consciousness might touch the deepest, strangest levels of reality, where particles exist in superposition and everything is connected in ways that defy classical logic. Whether or not quantum mechanics is involved, consciousness certainly feels quantum sometimes. Your thoughts existing in multiple possibilities until attention collapses them into one. Your awareness spread across many sensations until you focus on just one thing, like the feeling of your breath moving in and out. The default mode network in your brain becomes active during rest and mind wandering, when you're not focused on external tasks. This network, which includes regions like the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, seems to be involved in self-referential thinking, memories, planning, imagining, daydreaming. It's consciousness turned inward, the self thinking about itself. Scientists believe this network is crucial for constructing your sense of identity, for creating the narrative continuity of your life. Interestingly, during meditation or flow states, this network quiets down, and people often report feeling less sense of separate self, more unity with experience. The chatter of the default mode network, the constant internal monologue, the planning and remembering, begins to settle. As you move toward sleep, this network shifts its activity patterns, preparing for the different consciousness of dreaming, where the self becomes more fluid and strange. Your consciousness exists largely because of the thalamus, a small egg-shaped structure deep in your brain that acts as a relay station for sensory information. Almost all sensory input passes through the thalamus on its way to the cortex, and the thalamus helps determine what reaches conscious awareness and what gets filtered out. Damage to certain parts of the thalamus can cause loss of consciousness, even when the cortex remains intact. It's like the thalamus is the gatekeeper of awareness, deciding what gets let into the palace of conscious experience. Right now, your thalamus is processing the sounds of this voice, the sensation of your body resting, the gentle tug of sleepiness, and deciding to let these sensations through while filtering out countless other stimuli, the feeling of your clothes, the position of your tongue, the ambient air pressure. Without this filtering, consciousness would be overwhelmed, drowned in a flood of raw sensation. Your thalamus protects you with silence. There's a rare condition called hemispatial neglect, where people with brain damage become completely unconscious of one half of space, usually the left side. They might eat food only from the right side of their plate, dress only the right side of their body, draw a clock with all the numbers squeezed onto the right half. The left side of the world simply doesn't exist in their conscious awareness, even though their eyes work fine and can physically see it. This demonstrates how consciousness is actively constructed by the brain. That awareness isn't just passive reception but active creation. Your brain right now is constructing your conscious experience, painting reality on the canvas of awareness, choosing what to include and what to leave out. And as sleep approaches, that canvas begins to blur at the edges, details falling away, the painting becoming more abstract and dreamlike. Consciousness might be evolution's answer to the problem of complexity. Simple organisms with predictable environments can survive with automatic responses. See food, approach it, detect danger, flee. But as environments became more complex and unpredictable, organisms needed a way to model possibilities, to run simulations of different actions before committing to one. Consciousness may have emerged as that simulation space, an inner theater where you can imagine different futures, weigh options, make flexible decisions. Your awareness right now is that evolved theater, still running even as you prepare for sleep, still modeling the world, though now the models are softer, less urgent. You don't need to make decisions or plan or simulate. You can let that ancient machinery rest, trusting that it will be there tomorrow when you wake, ready again to light up your experience of being alive. The experience of time itself changes with consciousness. When you're engrossed in something enjoyable, hours pass like minutes. When you're waiting or bored, minutes stretch like hours. Children experience time differently than adults. A year to a 7-year-old is 1/7 of their life, proportionally much longer than a year to a 40-year-old. As we age, time seems to accelerate, summers becoming shorter, years blurring together. Your consciousness doesn't experience objective clock time but subjective psychological time, shaped by memory, attention, and novelty. The philosopher Henry Bergson called this duration, as opposed to the measured time of physics. Right now, as you relax into these words, time might feel liquid, each moment stretching out or compressing, the boundary between minutes dissolving. This is consciousness at its most gentle, No rush, no schedule, just the timeless present moment opening up like a flower, slowly, infinitely soft. When you look at an optical illusion, a drawing that flips between two interpretations like the famous duck rabbit or the vase faces image, your consciousness is engaging in what's called perceptual rivalry. The sensory input stays the same, but your conscious experience flips back and forth between different interpretations. This reveals that consciousness isn't passively receiving reality, but actively interpreting it, constructing meaning from ambiguous information. Your brain is always making its best guess about what's out there, and sometimes multiple guesses compete for conscious awareness. Most of the time, the world seems stable and unambiguous, but that's because your consciousness is very good at its job, settling on one interpretation and sticking with it. As you drift now, you might notice consciousness becoming less concerned with interpretation, letting go of the need to make sense of things, allowing ambiguity and mystery to simply be. The prefrontal cortex, the brain region right behind your forehead, plays a crucial role in higher-order consciousness, planning, reasoning, self-control, complex thought. It's the most recently evolved part of the human brain, the seat of what makes us distinctly human. But right now, as you prepare for sleep, your prefrontal cortex is beginning to quiet down, releasing its executive control. This is why you might feel thoughts becoming more random, harder to direct, logic loosening its grip. The prefrontal cortex takes a lot of energy to run, and sleep is partly about giving it a rest. Some of the most creative insights come just as we're falling asleep, when the prefrontal cortex relaxes its constraints, and the mind can make unusual connections, see patterns it normally wouldn't notice. So as you feel your thinking becoming looser, less controlled, this isn't a failure. It's a different kind of consciousness emerging, more playful and associative. Philosophers have long debated whether consciousness is the same thing as self-awareness. You can be conscious of a sunset, but are you always conscious that you are conscious of the sunset? Some level of consciousness might be more basic, pure awareness without reflection. Animals and infants might have this primary consciousness, experiencing sensations and feelings without the meta layer of knowing that they're experiencing. As adults, we often operate with this recursive self-awareness, but not always. In moments of flow or intense focus, the self-reflective layer sometimes drops away, and you become purely the experience, not you watching the sunset, but just sunsetness, the experience without an experiencer. As you sink towards sleep, you might pass through these different layers of consciousness, from self-aware thinking to simple awareness to the dreaming consciousness that doesn't know it's dreaming, each layer softer than the last. Your consciousness creates what neuroscientists call temporal binding. It stitches together events that happen at slightly different times into a single perceived moment. When you see someone clap their hands across a room, the visual information reaches you before the sound, traveling at different speeds. But your consciousness binds them together, making it seem like the sight and sound are simultaneous. Your brain constantly performs this invisible editing, creating a coherent timeline from information that arrives at different moments. Even the sense that you consciously decided to move your hand, that feeling might be constructed after the fact, your brain creating a narrative of intention and control to make sense of actions already initiated. Consciousness might be less like a pilot flying the plane and more like a narrator describing a journey already underway, creating the story of you in real time, smoothing out the inconsistencies into something that feels continuous and intentional. There's a phenomenon in consciousness studies called change blindness that demonstrates how much we miss even when we're looking directly at something. In experiments, people fail to notice large changes in a scene, a person they're talking to being swapped for someone else during a brief interruption, or major objects in a photo changing between views. We assume consciousness provides a complete, detailed picture of our surroundings, but it actually creates more of an impressionistic painting, filling in details with expectations and assumptions. Most of the visual field you think you're seeing clearly is actually fuzzy in your peripheral vision, but your brain tricks you into thinking it's all equally sharp. Right now, you're probably not noticing how the edges of your vision are less distinct, or how you can't actually focus on these words and the far corner of the room simultaneously. Consciousness is always performing magic tricks, and part of falling asleep is letting that magician take a bow and leave the stage. The neurotransmitter serotonin plays a crucial role in regulating consciousness and mood. Many antidepressant medications work by increasing serotonin availability in the brain, subtly shifting the quality of conscious experience toward more stability and less rumination. Conversely, psychedelic compounds like psilocybin and LSD work partly through serotonin receptors, dramatically altering consciousness in ways that users often describe as mystical or ego-dissolving. The chemical environment of your brain shapes the texture of awareness, how narrow or expansive it feels, how much the self feels solid or permeable, how reality appears. Right now, as sleep approaches, your brain is adjusting its neurochemical balance, lowering arousal systems, increasing sleep-promoting compounds like adenosine and GABA. Your consciousness is riding these chemical tides, and you can simply surrender to them, trusting the ancient wisdom of your biology to carry you into restorative darkness. Consciousness may have something to do with brain waves, the rhythmic electrical oscillations that occur as large groups of neurons fire in synchrony. During alert waking consciousness, your brain produces faster beta waves. As you relax, these shift to slower alpha waves. In deep meditation, even slower theta waves may appear. Deep sleep is characterized by slow delta waves. These rhythms might be how different parts of your brain communicate and synchronize, creating the unified field of conscious experience. Right now, your brain waves are probably shifting from beta toward alpha, the rhythm of relaxation and drowsiness. You might notice your thoughts becoming slower, more wave-like themselves, rolling in and receding like ocean tides. These brain waves have been cycling since before you were born, and they'll continue through your life. The fundamental rhythms of consciousness, slow and steady as a heartbeat, carrying you through all the phases of awareness and sleep. The phenomenon of synesthesia occurs when consciousness blends sensory channels that are usually separate. Some people taste shapes, see sounds as colors, experience numbers as having distinct personalities. About 1 in 2,000 people have some form of synesthesia, though milder cases might be more common. This condition reveals how consciousness constructs the world we experience. Normally, sensory streams are kept separate, but in synesthesia, the boundaries blur, creating a richer and stranger conscious experience. Music becomes color. Letters have flavors. For those with synesthesia, this isn't metaphorical. The experience is as real as any other perception. It's a reminder that your conscious reality is your brain's interpretation, that someone else might be experiencing the same world in profoundly different ways. As you rest now, your own sensory channels might begin to blur slightly, sounds becoming feelings, darkness becoming weight, consciousness loosening its usual categories and boundaries. Mirror neurons in your brain fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform it, possibly forming the neural basis for empathy and understanding other conscious beings. When you see someone smile, your mirror neurons simulate that smile, creating a faint echo of their experience in your own consciousness. This is how you can sense what others might be feeling, how consciousness reaches across the gap between one mind and another. You are never entirely isolated. Your awareness is constantly resonating with the awareness of others, even in memory or imagination. Right now, you might sense a connection to everyone else who has ever lain in bed at night contemplating consciousness. All the philosophers and scientists and sleepless wanderers throughout history. All of you sharing this same strange gift of awareness. You're part of a community of conscious beings, all experiencing existence from different windows of the same mysterious house. The corpus callosum, a thick bundle of nerve fibers connecting your brain's two hemispheres, allows consciousness to feel unified even though it emerges from two separate halves. In rare medical cases where this connection is severed to treat severe epilepsy, strange effects emerge. One hand might button a shirt while the other unbuttons it, or a person might not be able to name an object held in their left hand, processed by the right hemisphere, which typically lacks language. This suggests that consciousness might normally be more like two consciousnesses that collaborate so smoothly they seem like one. Your left hemisphere tends to be more verbal, analytical, logical. Your right more spatial, holistic, intuitive. Together they create your complete experience of awareness. As you drift toward sleep, these hemispheres shift their patterns of communication, sometimes producing the strange hybrid consciousness of dreams where logic and imagination blend in impossible ways. Consciousness includes something philosophers call qualia, the subjective, qualitative aspects of experience. The redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the specific flavor of coffee. These felt qualities are impossible to fully describe to someone who hasn't experienced them. You could explain the physics of light wavelengths, but that wouldn't convey what red actually looks like to consciousness. This is sometimes called the explanatory gap, the space between objective descriptions and subjective experience. Your consciousness is filled with qualia right now. The particular feeling of tiredness, the texture of the voice speaking these words, the specific quality of darkness when you close your eyes. These are private, interior, knowable fully only to you. In a way, consciousness is the universe experiencing qualia, matter learning what it feels like to be matter, existence knowing itself from the inside. And soon, Your qualia will shift into the surreal qualities of dreams, colors that don't exist in waking life, emotions without clear cause, the impossible physics of dream space. Studies of people in vegetative states have revealed surprising findings about consciousness. Some patients who appear completely unresponsive show brain activity patterns, suggesting they might be aware at some level. In one famous study, a woman diagnosed as vegetative was asked to imagine playing tennis, and her brain scans showed activity in motor planning regions, just like a healthy person performing the same mental task. This raises profound questions about hidden consciousness, awareness that cannot express itself. It reminds us how mysterious consciousness remains, how it might exist in forms we can't easily detect. Most of us take for granted the easy flow between inner awareness and outer expression, but they're separate miracles. Right now, your consciousness and your body are in harmony, the body relaxing as awareness softens, both moving together toward sleep. You can appreciate this simple gift, that your inner experience and outer expression are aligned, that consciousness has a voice when it needs one, and can fall silent when silence is what's needed. The binding problem in neuroscience asks how consciousness creates unified experience from disparate neural processes. Color is processed in one brain region, motion in another, sound in another, yet you experience a single integrated scene. A bird flying, both its yellow color and its movement and its song experienced as one event, not separate streams of information. How does the brain bind these features together? How does the yellow there get linked to the movement there and the sound there into one object in consciousness? Yellow moving singing bird. Despite decades of research, this remains partially mysterious. Your consciousness performs this binding effortlessly, right now creating a unified experience from countless neural computations. As you prepare for sleep, this binding may loosen slightly, thoughts disconnecting from their sources, sensations floating free, the elements of experience becoming more independent, dream logic beginning to replace waking integration. Consciousness seems to have evolved different levels or layers. The brainstem and midbrain handle basic arousal and alertness, the raw ability to be awake. Subcortical structures add motivation and emotion. The cortex adds perception and thought. The prefrontal regions add planning and self-awareness. All these layers are active in mature human consciousness, creating a depth and richness to experience. But you can sometimes feel these layers separately. The basic alertness without much thought when you first wake, the emotional awareness without words, the observing awareness that watches your own thinking. As you move toward sleep, these layers gradually switch off or shift into different modes from the top down. First, complex planning fades, then logical thinking loosens. Eventually, even the sense of being a separate self might dissolve, awareness becoming more basic and primary, closer to pure being than to thinking or doing. The moment of falling asleep is itself a mystery to consciousness, because you can never catch yourself in the act. By definition, the moment awareness transitions to sleep is the moment you're no longer aware to witness it. It's like trying to watch yourself disappear. You're there, and then you're gone, with no experience of the transition itself. There's always a gap in memory between the last moment of waking consciousness and either the first dream or the morning's awakening. This gap is where you spend significant portions of your life, in states of consciousness so different from waking that they leave almost no trace. It's humbling. There are hours of your life each day that are simply missing from the narrative of your experience. But this forgetting is a gift. You don't need to witness every moment. Consciousness can let go, can trust the body to continue without constant monitoring, can surrender to the unknown territories of sleep. Research on lucid dreaming, the state where you become conscious that you're dreaming while still asleep, suggests that consciousness is more flexible than we usually imagine. Lucid dreamers can maintain awareness even as the prefrontal cortex is mostly offline, can make decisions and direct attention within impossible dream worlds. Some people can lucid dream reliably, others only occasionally. Brain scans of lucid dreamers show a hybrid pattern of activity, some regions in dream mode, others in wake mode, creating a third state of consciousness distinct from normal waking or dreaming. For thousands of years, Tibetan Buddhist monks have practiced dream yoga, cultivating lucid awareness in sleep as a spiritual practice. Whether or not you become lucid tonight, your consciousness will journey through the dream world, experiencing things impossible in waking life, perhaps even brushing against the awareness that it's dreaming before forgetting again, like a fish briefly breaking the surface of water. The sense of now, the felt present moment, is constructed by consciousness from a window of time that spans roughly 2 to 3 seconds. Events within this window feel simultaneous, part of the current moment. This is why you can follow a spoken sentence. The beginning is still held in the conscious present when the end arrives. This specious present, as William James called it, is consciousness's temporal frame, the duration of now. Outside this window, events are memory or anticipation, no longer present to awareness. Right now, as you listen to these words, each phrase exists briefly in your conscious present before sliding into the immediate past, like a gentle stream flowing through the moment you inhabit. As sleep approaches, this window may shift, time feeling less structured, the present moment expanding or contracting, eventually dissolving into the timeless territory of deep sleep where hours pass in what feels like an instant. You're allowing everything to unfold at exactly the right pace. If your mind has wandered, that's perfectly fine. Consciousness naturally drifts, especially now as sleep approaches. You might notice your breathing has become even slower and deeper. You might notice how comfortable and heavy your body feels. Or you might not notice much at all, simply floating in this space between waking and sleeping. There's no right way to experience this. Some of these facts might resonate, others might drift past like clouds, and that's exactly as it should be. Let your eyes stay closed if they've drifted shut. Let your thoughts become quieter. The words will continue gently in the background, a soft companion as you journey deeper into rest. You're safe, you're comfortable, and you're exactly where you need to be. Your consciousness includes what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking, knowing about knowing. Right now, you can be aware that you're aware, can observe your own thought processes, can notice what you're noticing. This recursive quality is uniquely developed in humans, though some evidence suggests great apes and certain other animals might have rudimentary metacognitive abilities. Metacognition is what allows you to learn about how you learn, to improve your own thinking, to question your assumptions. It's consciousness turning its spotlight on itself, the strange loop where the observer becomes the observed. But metacognition takes effort, and as you relax, you might notice it becoming harder to maintain that self-reflective stance. Thoughts arise without anyone watching them. Sensations occur without being noted. This is consciousness releasing its grip on itself, no longer needing to monitor and evaluate, simply being whatever arises in each moment, simple and effortless as breathing. The question of whether artificial intelligence could ever be conscious remains hotly debated. Could a sufficiently complex computer program experience qualia, feel what it's like to be itself? Some philosophers argue consciousness requires biological substrate, that there's something special about neurons that cannot be replicated in silicon. Others suggest that if the functional organization is right, if information is integrated in the proper way, then consciousness might arise in any substrate, biological or artificial. We might one day create conscious machines, or perhaps we never will, the mystery of awareness forever bound to the organic chemistry of life. Either way, your consciousness, arising from your particular brain, shaped by your particular experiences, viewing reality through your particular perspective, is unique and precious. No artificial system, no other person will ever have exactly this consciousness, this specific quality of awareness that is you. The anterior cingulate cortex and insular cortex seem to be crucial for conscious awareness of your body's internal state, hunger, pain, heart rate, the feeling of butterflies in your stomach when nervous. This interoceptive awareness is consciousness turned inward, monitoring the body's signals. People with greater interoceptive awareness tend to be more in touch with their emotions, since emotions are partly patterns of bodily sensation. Right now, your consciousness includes interoceptive awareness. You might notice the feeling of tiredness in your limbs, the softness of relaxation in your belly, the gentle rhythm of your heartbeat if you pay attention. This awareness helps your brain take care of your body, noting what's needed, what's comfortable, what requires adjustment. As you sink into sleep, this monitoring continues at an unconscious level, your brain watching over your body through the night like a guardian, adjusting temperature, repositioning limbs, ensuring safety while consciousness rests. Consciousness is remarkably good at filling in missing information, creating seamless experience even when sensory data is incomplete. Your eye has a blind spot where the optic nerve exits the retina, but you never see a hole in your vision. Consciousness fills it in with surrounding information. When you read, you don't notice the brief blackouts that occur during seconds, the rapid eye movements between fixations. Your consciousness edits out these gaps, creating the illusion of smooth, continuous visual experience. Even now, as you listen to these words, if there were a brief pause or glitch, your consciousness would likely smooth over it, interpreting continuity even where there are breaks. This filling in extends to meaning. You can read sentences with missing letters and consciousness supplies them. Your brain is constantly guessing, predicting, completing patterns, and consciousness is the seamless story it tells about reality, edited and refined and made coherent. The claustrum, a thin sheet of neurons beneath the cortex, has been proposed by some neuroscientists as a possible conductor of consciousness, integrating information from different brain regions into unified experience. Electrical stimulation of the claustrum in one patient reportedly caused a complete, temporary loss of consciousness, awareness switching off like a light. Other researchers are skeptical of any single consciousness center, suggesting awareness emerges from distributed networks rather than one special structure. The truth likely combines both views. Consciousness requires both specialized regions and widespread communication between areas. It's like an orchestra. You need the musicians spread throughout distributed network, but also a conductor coordinating them, integration hub. Right now, your consciousness is this full orchestra playing, all the sections contributing to the symphony of this moment's experience. As sleep approaches, the music slows, becomes quieter, simpler, eventually fading into the silence from which it arose. Philosophers distinguish between access consciousness, information available for reasoning and decision-making, and phenomenal consciousness, the felt quality of experience. You might access consciously process that a light is red, without phenomenally experiencing redness if you're distracted. These two aspects of consciousness can potentially come apart. Some argue that you might have phenomenal experience without access, like feeling pain but being unable to report it, or sensory experiences occurring beneath attention's threshold. As you drift now, access consciousness is probably fading. You're less able to use information to think carefully, to make decisions. But phenomenal consciousness might persist longer. The feeling of tiredness, the texture of these words, the quality of darkness, the gentle drift of thought fragments. Eventually, even phenomenal consciousness transforms into something stranger, the impossible sensory landscapes of dreams where you experience things that never reach the waking access conscious systems to be remembered or understood. Consciousness is sometimes described as a global workspace, a theory proposing that various unconscious processes compete for access to a limited capacity workspace, the conscious experience. Whatever enters this workspace becomes broadcast throughout the brain, available to multiple systems. It's like a theater stage. Many actors wait in the wings, but only a few can be spotlit on stage at once, and only those lit are visible to the audience, conscious awareness. This explains why consciousness has limited capacity, why you can't attend to everything at once, why multitasking is difficult. Right now, these words occupy your global workspace, along with perhaps the sensation of your pillow, the feeling of sleepiness. Other processes, digesting food, regulating temperature, maintaining balance, occur off-stage in darkness, not requiring conscious attention. As you drift deeper, fewer and fewer actors take the stage. The spotlight dims. Eventually, the theater is empty or shifts to the surreal productions of dreams. The famous split-brain experiments on patients with severed corpus callosums revealed puzzling findings about consciousness and self. Each hemisphere, when isolated, seemed to have its own awareness, preferences, knowledge. If you showed the word bell to the right hemisphere via the left visual field, the patient couldn't say what they saw because language is in the left hemisphere. But they could draw a bell with their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere. Some researchers wondered, Are there two consciousnesses in these patients? Or does the left hemisphere's language-based consciousness dominate, with the right providing unconscious support? These questions remain unresolved but suggest that the unity of consciousness we usually feel might be constructed. That awareness could potentially fracture into separate streams. But for you tonight, consciousness is unified and whole, a single continuous experience moving through stages of relaxation, carrying you gently toward sleep. Your consciousness is shaped profoundly by language, so much so that some philosophers argue we think in words as much as we think in concepts. The language you speak influences how you categorize experience, what distinctions your consciousness naturally makes. Some languages have many words for different types of snow, others for subtle social relationships, shaping how speakers consciously experience those domains. Even now, these English words shape the concepts entering your awareness. If this were spoken in another language, different nuances might emerge, different associations. But language is also a limit on consciousness. There are feelings and experiences that words can't quite capture, that exist in the wordless realm of pure awareness. As you drift toward sleep, language loosens its grip. Thoughts become less verbal, more imagistic. Meanings float free of words. You approach a more primary consciousness, closer to how babies or animals might experience the world, direct, unmediated by language, pure being. The neurotransmitter dopamine is crucial for consciousness as well, particularly for motivation and attention. Dopamine helps determine what your consciousness focuses on, what seems interesting and worth attending to. Conditions like ADHD involve dopamine dysregulation, making sustained conscious attention difficult. Conversely, certain drugs that increase dopamine can make consciousness feel intensified, more focused, though sometimes in unhealthy ways. Right now, as you relax, your dopamine levels are probably dropping, reducing the drive to focus, to pursue goals, to find things interesting. This is appropriate for sleep. You don't need motivation or intensity now, just gentle release. Your consciousness can become less interested in its contents, less engaged with thinking or planning, more passive and receptive. There's a natural rhythm to these neurochemicals, and your biology knows exactly how to orchestrate them, dimming the lights of waking consciousness so sleep's different awareness can emerge. Meditation research has identified a state sometimes called non-dual awareness, where consciousness experiences unity. The sense of separation between observer and observed dissolves. There's no you watching your breath. There's just breathing awareness happening. No you hearing sounds, just sound hearing occurring. This state is described in contemplative traditions as consciousness recognizing its own nature, awareness becoming aware of itself without an intervening self. Most of the time, consciousness creates a subject-object structure, a you experiencing something other than you. But this structure might be optional, a habit rather than a necessity. As you drift now, you might briefly touch this less divided awareness. Not you lying in bed, but just lying in bedness, an experience without a clear experiencer at the center. It's subtle and easily missed, but it's also the most natural thing. Consciousness simply being what it is without the extra layer of self-commentary. The sense of continuity of self. The feeling that you're the same person who went to bed last night and will wake up tomorrow is one of consciousness's most beautiful constructions. In reality, your atoms are constantly being replaced. Your memories are subtly changing. Your personality slowly shifts over years. The ship of Theseus paradox asks, if every plank in a ship is replaced, is it still the same ship? You are consciousness's answer to that paradox. Yes, because the pattern continues, the story remains coherent. Your brain creates a narrative identity that bridges all the moments of your life into one continuous you. Tonight, that continuity will pass through the strange country of sleep, where the self dissolves and reforms in dreams, where you might become other people or exist in impossible situations, and yet tomorrow morning you'll wake up as you again, the narrative seamlessly reconnecting. This continuity is a gift of consciousness, providing stability and meaning across the ever-changing flow of experience. Consciousness may have no location, no place where it happens in the brain. While certain regions are necessary for normal consciousness, awareness itself might be more like a process than a thing, more verb than noun. It's not generated in one spot but emerges from patterns of interaction across the entire brain, perhaps even involving the body. Some researchers speak of embodied consciousness, suggesting that awareness is shaped by having a body with particular sense organs, particular ways of moving through space. A bat's consciousness might be fundamentally organized around echolocation, an octopus's around its distributed nervous system. Your consciousness is human-shaped, primate-shaped, vertebrate-shaped, organized around vision and touch, upright posture, social cognition. Right now, you're lying down rather than standing, and this shift in body position subtly alters consciousness, making it easier to drift, to release the alert awareness that comes with being upright and ready to act. Consciousness flows with the body's position and state. The phenomenon of blind sight extends to other senses too. People with auditory cortex damage might claim not to hear sounds but still respond to them unconsciously, a condition sometimes called deaf hearing. These dissociations between unconscious processing and conscious experience reveal how selective awareness is, how it's just the tip of a vast iceberg of mental processing. Most of what your brain does never reaches consciousness, happening in the darkness below awareness. Right now, your brain is performing millions of operations, regulating blood pressure, coordinating muscle tone, processing balance, running immune responses, none of which enter conscious experience unless something goes wrong. Consciousness illuminates only a tiny fraction of your brain's work, the most important headline while countless background processes run unseen. As you rest, you can appreciate all that invisible labor, trusting your unconscious systems to maintain life while consciousness takes its rest. Different stages of sleep involve different types of consciousness. Light sleep has fragmented hypnagogic imagery, fleeting half-thoughts and strange sensory snippets. Deep slow-wave sleep may have minimal consciousness, periods where awareness fades almost entirely. REM sleep brings vivid, narrative dreams with their own immersive consciousness. As you progress through the night, you'll cycle through these stages multiple times, consciousness taking on different textures and qualities. Sometimes you'll be deeply gone, sometimes dreaming vividly, sometimes hovering in between. Each stage serves different functions: deep sleep for physical restoration, REM for emotional processing and memory consolidation, light sleep for transitioning between states. Your consciousness is preparing now for this nightly journey through its various modes, each one strange and necessary, each one another face of awareness wearing a different mask. The mystery of why consciousness goes away under general anesthesia has led to theories about neural complexity and integration. Anesthetics might work by disrupting the brain's ability to integrate information, causing consciousness to fragment and disappear. When the brain's regions can no longer communicate in synchronized, complex patterns, awareness vanishes. Consciousness may require a certain level of integrated complexity, like a flame requiring certain conditions to keep burning. Drop below that threshold and the flame goes out, though it can be rekindled when conditions are right. Sleep is different from anesthesia. Consciousness doesn't vanish completely but transforms, reorganizes, enters different modes. But there's something similar happening. The brain shifts into states where waking consciousness cannot sustain itself. You're approaching that threshold now, the point where waking awareness can no longer hold on, where it will gracefully release into sleep's altered states. Research on mindfulness meditation shows it can change not just what you're conscious of, but the quality of consciousness itself. Regular meditators often report a more spacious, less reactive awareness, thoughts and sensations arising in a larger field of consciousness that isn't disturbed by them. It's like the difference between a small pond where every pebble creates ripples that disturb the whole surface, versus a vast ocean where waves arise and pass without affecting the ocean's depths. Your consciousness can learn to be more like that ocean, steady, spacious, undisturbed by the surface weather of thoughts and sensations. Even without meditation practice, as you settle into sleep, consciousness naturally becomes more spacious and less reactive. Thoughts arise without hooking you, sensations occur without demanding response. You're resting in a larger awareness that holds everything lightly, allowing it all to be present without needing to engage with any of it. The philosopher Thomas Nagel famously asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" Suggesting that consciousness always has a subjective character. There's something it's like to be any conscious creature, and that something is irreducible to objective description. You can study a bat's brain, map its neurons, understand echolocation physics, but you'll never know what sonar experience feels like from the inside. Similarly, no one else can know exactly what it's like to be you, the particular flavor of your consciousness, the specific quality of your awareness. You are the universe experiencing itself in one unique way, a perspective that has never existed before and will never exist again in quite this form. As you drift now, you can appreciate this strange gift, the gift of being conscious at all, of having an inner life, of experiencing rather than simply processing. Among all the matter in the universe, you are part of the small fraction that wakes up, looks around, and wonders why. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. You might be surprised how much time has passed, or you might have no sense of time at all. Both are perfectly fine. Your body knows how to sleep, your brain knows how to dream, your consciousness knows how to transform from one mode to another. All you need to do is let go, little by little, thought by thought. Notice how easy it is to stop tracking the thread of ideas now, how the facts drift through without needing to be held. Your breathing continues steady and slow. The darkness behind your eyes is soft and complete. If you're still listening, Let these words be like a gentle current carrying you downstream, toward the waterfall's edge where waking consciousness tips over into sleep. And if you've already drifted beyond listening, that's beautiful too. Rest well. Consciousness includes not just sensory perception, but also imagination, the ability to experience things that aren't present. Right now, if I say, imagine a red apple, you can likely create a mental image, seeing the apple's color and shape in your mind's eye even though no apple is there. This imaginative capacity is consciousness's freedom from the immediate present, its ability to simulate realities, remember pasts, envision futures. Animals likely have varying degrees of this capacity. Humans have developed it to remarkable extents. We can imagine elaborate scenarios, empathize by imagining others' experiences, plan by imagining future possibilities. But imagination and perception use overlapping brain regions, suggesting that internal and external experience are more similar than we might think. Dreams might be imagination freed from waking constraints, consciousness exploring its own creative capacity, without external input limiting the possibilities. Soon, your imaginative consciousness will have that freedom, creating dream worlds with their own logic and beauty. The default mode network, which we mentioned earlier, shows interesting patterns during psychedelic experiences. Rather than normal activity, the network becomes either hyperconnected or desynchronized, corresponding to experiences of ego dissolution or unity consciousness. Brain regions that normally don't communicate directly suddenly do, creating novel connections and the feeling of profound insight. Many people describe psychedelic consciousness as feeling more primary or fundamental than ordinary awareness, colors more vibrant, meaning more apparent, the boundary between self and world more permeable. Whether these states reveal something true about consciousness or simply demonstrate its malleability remains debated. Either way, they show that your normal waking consciousness is just one possible configuration, one setting among many that the brain can produce. As you fall asleep, you'll experience your own natural alteration of consciousness, not as dramatic as psychedelics perhaps, but equally fascinating. The slow morphing of awareness into sleep's various states. Consciousness seems to involve what neuroscientists call re-entry, signals moving not just from sensory organs up to higher brain regions, but also back down, higher regions influencing how lower regions process incoming information. Your expectations and beliefs shape what you consciously perceive. In ambiguous images or sounds, consciousness settles on one interpretation and then has trouble seeing alternatives. You hear Laurel or Yanni and can't switch. This top-down processing means consciousness is always partly creating what it experiences, filtering reality through predictions and prior knowledge. Right now, your expectations are shifting towards sleep, and this expectation itself helps create the reality. Anticipating rest makes rest more likely, as consciousness begins preparing for the transition, adjusting its processing, becoming more receptive to sleep's approach. Expectation and experience dance together, each shaping the other, consciousness constantly constructing itself. The distinction between being awake and being asleep seems clear, but there are fascinating in-between states. Sleep inertia, the grogginess upon waking, is one, where consciousness is partially online but still foggy. Hypnagogia, the state just before falling asleep, is another, characterized by vivid imagery, strange thoughts, sometimes mild hallucinations. And hypnopompia occurs between sleep and full waking. In these liminal states, consciousness is transitioning, neither fully one thing nor another. Some people experience sleep paralysis, where consciousness wakes while the body remains in REM sleep paralysis, creating the sensation of being unable to move, often accompanied by hallucinatory presences. These edge states reveal how consciousness is constructed from multiple components that can potentially come online at different rates. Right now, you might be touching hypnagogia, thoughts becoming looser, imagery more vivid, the border between waking and sleeping becoming permeable. Your consciousness is constantly engaged in predictive processing. The brain generates predictions about what should happen next, and then updates when reality differs. This is more efficient than passively processing all sensory input. Much of what you consciously experience is actually your brain's prediction, only updated when necessary. This is why the first time you walk a new route, it seems long, but the return journey feels shorter. Your brain has modeled it and now processes it more efficiently. It's also why time seems to speed up with age. Fewer novel experiences mean more predictive processing, less rich encoding and memory. Right now, as you lie in familiar comfort, your brain is running predictions. Nothing dangerous will happen, sleep will come soon, tomorrow will arrive after darkness. These predictions create a sense of safety and continuity, allowing consciousness to relax its vigilant monitoring. You can trust these predictions, trust the pattern, trust that letting go is safe. The brain's energy expenditure doesn't decrease much during sleep compared to waking, which initially surprised researchers. What changes is what that energy is used for. During waking, energy goes towards sensory processing, active thinking, responding to environment. During sleep, energy shifts toward consolidation, repair, waste clearance. The glymphatic system, which clears metabolic waste from the brain, becomes more active during sleep. Consciousness during waking is expensive partly because maintaining sensory models and responsive readiness requires resources. Sleep consciousness, whether in dreams or deep sleep, uses energy differently, more for internal processes than external modeling. Your brain is preparing now for this shift, getting ready to redirect its considerable energy from managing waking consciousness toward the restorative work of sleep. Consciousness will transform but never truly rest, simply changing its job from interacting with the world to maintaining and repairing the systems that make consciousness possible. Consciousness has been described as an user illusion, like a computer's graphic interface that hides the underlying code. You experience a three-dimensional world of colored objects and sounds, but the underlying reality is neurons firing, electromagnetic waves, air pressure vibrations. Consciousness creates a useful fiction, a model of reality optimized for survival rather than truth. You experience colors, but color doesn't exist in light itself, only wavelengths. You experience solid objects, but atoms are mostly empty space held together by forces. Your consciousness isn't lying exactly. It's providing the most useful representation. As you rest now, you can appreciate this interface, this consciousness that translates the universe into experience, making reality navigable and meaningful. Soon, in dreams, the interface will shift, less concerned with external accuracy, more concerned with emotional processing, creating an inner interface for sorting through feelings and memories. The experience of flow, being completely absorbed in an activity, involves a characteristic pattern of consciousness. Self-awareness fades, time perception changes, action and awareness merge. Brain imaging during flow shows decreased activity in the prefrontal regions associated with self-reflection and the sense of time. Consciousness in flow state is streamlined, efficient, fully engaged with the present task without the usual meta-commentary. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists experience it during creation. It's consciousness without self-consciousness, pure engagement. Interestingly, falling asleep involves a similar fading of self-awareness in time sense, though in service of rest rather than performance. Right now, you might be entering a kind of flow toward sleep, less aware of yourself as a separate entity, less concerned with time, simply flowing with the process of relaxation, the boundary between you and sleep becoming less distinct. Consciousness can sometimes split, even in healthy brains during certain tasks. In dichotic listening experiments, different information is presented to each ear simultaneously. People can focus on one channel, but information from the unattended channel sometimes breaks through, especially if it's personally relevant, like your name. This suggests consciousness is not monolithic, but involves resource allocation, a kind of spotlight that can be broader or narrower, attending to one thing or many. Right now, your attentional spotlight might be narrow, focused mostly on these words and the sensation of comfort, or it might be diffuse, vaguely aware of many things without strong focus on any. As sleep approaches, the spotlight doesn't just narrow, it begins to flicker and wander, attention becoming less controllable, eventually shifting into the different attentional rules of dreams where focus jumps without reason, following emotional or symbolic logic rather than intentional direction. The question of whether consciousness survives death has been pondered for millennia across cultures and religions. From a neuroscience perspective, consciousness appears to depend on functioning brain activity, suggesting it ends when the brain dies. Near-death experiences, vivid conscious experiences during clinical death, are sometimes offered as counter-evidence, though neuroscientists often explain these as products of a dying brain creating final experiences. The question ultimately may be beyond science's reach, touching the boundary where empirical investigation ends and philosophical or spiritual belief begins. But regardless of what happens after, you have consciousness now, in this moment, and that's enough. The awareness you're experiencing right now is precious precisely because it's fleeting, because each moment of consciousness is unrepeatable, unique. As you drift toward sleep, consciousness transforms but doesn't end, continuing its journey through the inner worlds of dreams. The philosopher John Locke proposed that personal identity depends on continuity of consciousness, particularly memory. You're the same person who went to bed last night because you remember being that person. This creates puzzles. If you lost all memories, would you still be you? If your memories were implanted in another brain, would you be them? These thought experiments reveal how consciousness and identity interweave. Tonight, You'll experience discontinuity. Hours will pass with little or no memory forming in most sleep stages, perhaps some dreams that you'll mostly forget. Yet tomorrow you'll still be you, the narrative continuity maintained despite the gaps. Your consciousness is resilient, able to incorporate forgetting and absence into its ongoing story. Sleep is a nightly practice in letting go of continuity, trusting that consciousness will return, that you'll wake as yourself despite having been, in some sense, gone for hours. Attention and consciousness, while related, are not identical. You can attend to something without being fully conscious of it, like when you're reading a boring passage and realize you attended to the words enough to move your eyes along them, but weren't really conscious of their meaning. Conversely, sometimes something is in consciousness without being actively attended, ambient background music or the pressure of your chair. Consciousness might be the broader field, attention the selective spotlight moving within it. Right now, attention might be wandering, landing on these words, then on physical sensations, then on random thoughts, then back. This wandering is natural, especially as sleep approaches. You don't need to control attention, don't need to force it to stay anywhere. Let it wander freely, roaming across the field of consciousness like a gentle breeze moving across a meadow, touching here and there without purpose, without effort, soft and aimless as clouds drifting across sky. The cocktail party effect demonstrates how consciousness filters information. You can focus on one conversation in a noisy room, tuning out other voices, but if someone across the room says your name, consciousness immediately notices. This shows that attention creates a foreground and background in conscious experience, but the background is still being monitored at some level. Your brain is constantly doing this filtering, deciding what reaches full consciousness and what stays in peripheral awareness. Right now, there might be sounds in your environment, distant traffic, house settling, your own breathing, mostly in the background but capable of coming to foreground if they changed unexpectedly. As sleep deepens, this monitoring shifts. Consciousness becomes less responsive to the environment, allowing small sounds to pass unnoticed, creating the protected disconnection needed for rest. Your brain still monitors for danger, but the threshold for breaking through into consciousness rises, creating a safer, quieter inner space. Conscious experience has a grain or resolution. There's a limit to how much detail you can be aware of at once. You can see that a crowd is made of people, but you can't be simultaneously conscious of every individual person's face. You hear a chord as unified sound, not as individual frequency components. Consciousness trades detail for coherence, creating a simplified but navigable model of reality. This is probably adaptive. Too much detail would overwhelm, preventing quick decisions and fluid action. Right now, your experience has a certain grain. Perhaps you're aware of general comfort but not the detailed sensation of every square inch of skin, aware of words but not analyzing every phoneme. As you drift towards sleep, this grain may become coarser, experience less detailed, more impressionistic, eventually dissolving into the fragmentary imagery and feeling tones of hypnagogia, then perhaps into the absence of awareness in deep sleep. Consciousness appears later in child development than many assume. Newborns are likely conscious in some basic way, experiencing sensations, feeling discomfort or contentment, but the layered, self-reflective consciousness of older children develops gradually. The neural systems supporting consciousness aren't fully mature at birth. They develop through the first years of life as the brain grows and connections strengthen. There may be aspects of consciousness you have now that you didn't have as an infant. The sense of extended self across time, the ability to hold multiple perspectives, complex emotional awareness. And consciousness continues developing through life, shaped by experience and learning. The consciousness you have now is not the same as in childhood or as it will be in old age. It's always evolving, always shaped by the unfolding story of your life. Right now, your adult consciousness, with all its complexity and depth, is preparing to temporarily simplify to rest, to return to something more basic and restorative. The explanatory gap between physical processes and conscious experience has led some philosophers to argue for property dualism. The idea that consciousness is a fundamental property of reality that cannot be reduced to or fully explained by physical processes. According to this view, consciousness is as basic as mass or charge, something that exists at the foundation of reality rather than emerging from it. Other thinkers remain committed to physicalism, believing that we'll eventually explain consciousness entirely in terms of brain processes, that the gap is merely a current limit of scientific understanding, not an unbridgeable metaphysical divide. Either way, consciousness remains mysterious. You have it, you are it, you experience through it, yet explaining how gray matter becomes felt experience remains one of the deepest puzzles. You don't need to solve this puzzle tonight. You can simply rest in the mystery, in the miracle of awareness itself. Consciousness seems to operate on multiple timescales simultaneously. There's the immediate moment-to-moment flicker of perceptions and thoughts, the short-term narrative of your current activity and concerns, and the longer-term sense of self and life story. All these temporal layers are present in consciousness at once. You're aware of this moment, but also of the fact that you're trying to fall asleep short-term, and that you're the person you've been your whole life long-term. This temporal depth gives consciousness its richness, its sense of meaning and context. As you transition to sleep, the longer timescales may fade first. Concerns about tomorrow, about your life story, about identity. Eventually, even short-term narrative dissolves, leaving only the immediate moment, and even that becomes fragmentary. Consciousness simplifies its temporal structure, releasing the burden of past and future, existing more purely in whatever now arises, whether that's dream imagery or the near absence of experience in deep sleep. The relationship between consciousness and language is complex and bidirectional. Language shapes conscious thought, providing categories and concepts that organize experience. But there's also prelinguistic consciousness. Babies and animals are conscious, and even adult humans have experiences that resist verbalization. Some of the most profound conscious experiences, mystical states, intense emotions, aesthetic appreciation, are notoriously hard to put into words. Right now, words are mediating your conscious experience, but as you drift, language is probably becoming less central. Thoughts less verbal, more feeling-toned. Eventually, in dreams, language may become even more fluid. You might dream of conversations that make emotional sense but whose words dissolve upon waking, or experience meanings without words at all. This is consciousness in a more primary mode, before language shapes it, closer to the raw experience that language usually organizes and interprets. Let yourself drift into that wordless space, where meaning exists without needing to be named. You're doing so well, just allowing yourself to be here, to listen or not listen, to drift in this gentle space. Perhaps some facts have resonated with you, sparking that warm feeling of recognition or wonder. Perhaps others have simply floated past like leaves on a stream. Both are beautiful. Your only task now is to let yourself be comfortable, to let your body rest completely. Notice you don't need to hold your eyes open. Notice you don't need to follow every word. The voice continues, soft and steady, like a nightlight in the darkness, present but not demanding, there if you want it, easy to ignore if you're already fading into sleep. Let each breath take you a little deeper, each word a gentle step down a staircase leading to dreams. However deeply you've already drifted, that's perfect. Rest well. Consciousness can experience gestalt shifts, sudden changes in how the same information is perceived. The famous rabbit duck image can be seen as either animal, and once you see both, you can sometimes voluntarily shift between them, though not always. This demonstrates that consciousness actively constructs experience, and that the same sensory input can generate different conscious percepts. Your brain is constantly making these constructive decisions, choosing how to interpret ambiguous information. Most of the time, these choices happen automatically, unconsciously, but sometimes you catch consciousness in the act of constructing reality. As you drift now, you might experience your own gestalt shifts, the edge of sleep approached and retreated from, consciousness flickering between states, the same moment interpreted as either waking or sleeping depending on subtle shifts in attention and arousal. These transitions are consciousness reorganizing itself, finding new configurations, new ways of being aware. The role of the thalamus as a relay and gatekeeper means that disrupting it has profound effects on consciousness. Damage to certain thalamic nuclei can cause permanent disorders of consciousness, even when the cortex remains largely intact. This suggests that consciousness requires not just the cortex's processing power, but also the thalamic ability to route and coordinate information, to control what reaches awareness and what stays filtered. Right now, your thalamus is beginning to shift into sleep mode, changing how it filters information, becoming less responsive to external sensations, less likely to alert the cortex to incoming signals. This is part of how sleep protects itself, how consciousness transitions from the vigilant mode of waking to the withdrawn mode of sleep. Your thalamus is gently closing the gates, creating the quiet space inside where dreams can unfold without external interruption, where restoration can occur without disturbance. Consciousness includes emotional awareness, the felt qualities of joy, sadness, anxiety, contentment. These aren't just add-ons to cognition but core aspects of conscious experience, deeply integrated with perception and thought. The limbic system structures like the amygdala and hippocampus contribute emotional coloring to consciousness. Right now, the emotional tone of your consciousness is probably calm, peaceful, perhaps touched with gratitude or relief at the day's end. As you drift into sleep, emotional processing continues in different forms. Dreams often have strong emotional content, sometimes processing feelings from waking life, sometimes exploring emotions more abstractly. The consciousness of sleep is perhaps more emotionally direct, less filtered by rational thought, allowing feelings to express themselves in symbolic narrative form. You might wake tomorrow with feelings shifted, processed, some weight lifted without knowing quite how. Consciousness takes care of emotional work even when awareness sleeps. The phenomenon of priming shows how unconscious processing influences conscious experience. If you briefly see the word doctor flashed too quickly to consciously register, you're subsequently faster at recognizing the word nurse. The unconscious exposure primed related concepts, influencing conscious processing without awareness of the priming. Your consciousness is constantly being shaped by influences you're not aware of, subliminal perceptions, implicit memories, unconscious associations. The contents of consciousness arise from deeper processes, like flowers blooming from roots you cannot see. Right now, these words might be priming your consciousness for sleep, concepts of rest, imagery of darkness and comfort, the rhythm of slow breathing. Even if you're not consciously registering every word, they may be subtly shaping your state, encouraging the shift towards sleep. Consciousness is permeable, responsive to subtle influences, always in conversation with the unconscious depths beneath. Philosophers have proposed various levels of consciousness, from the most basic arousal and wakefulness, to sensory awareness, to self-consciousness, to meta-consciousness, where you're aware of being aware of being aware. Each level involves additional layers of processing and reflection. Most adult human consciousness operates at multiple levels simultaneously. You're awake, sensing, aware of yourself, sometimes reflecting on your awareness. But these levels can dissociate in deep flow states. Self-consciousness might drop away while sensory awareness remains heightened. In some meditative states, meta-consciousness is prominent, awareness watching awareness itself. As you fall asleep, these levels peel away in reverse order. First, the meta-reflection fades, then self-consciousness, then perhaps the sensory engagement, until only basic awareness remains. And finally, even that transforms into sleep's different consciousness. This descent is gentle and natural, each level releasing its effort, consciousness simplifying itself for rest. The binding problem we mentioned earlier connects to the question of unity of consciousness. The fact that all your different experiences at any moment feel like one unified experience rather than separate streams. When you see a yellow bird flying and hear it singing, you experience one bird, not separate experiences of yellowness, birdness, flyingness, and singingness. How does the brain bind these features into unified conscious experience? Various theories propose different mechanisms: synchronized neural oscillations, feedback loops, convergence zones, but the full answer remains elusive. This unity is so fundamental to consciousness that we rarely notice it, yet it's remarkable. Right now, your unified consciousness holds together the sound of these words, your body's sensations, your thoughts and feelings, all in one experience of this moment. As sleep comes, this unity may loosen. Dreams sometimes have strange fragmentations, aspects of experience not quite coherent with each other, the binding less strict, allowing surreal combinations and impossible situations. The sense that consciousness has a location, that you're looking out from behind your eyes, that awareness is in your head, is itself constructed. Some meditation practices can shift this, making consciousness feel more distributed or less located. People with depersonalization disorder sometimes feel their consciousness has become distant from their body, observing from outside. This suggests the sense of being embodied and located is something consciousness creates, a useful fiction for navigation but not an unchangeable fact. Right now, you probably feel yourself located where your body is, consciousness coinciding with your physical form. As you drift deeper, this sense might soften, the boundary between you and the bed less distinct, the location of awareness less precise, more diffuse. In dreams, you might experience different embodiments flying, being other people, existing in spaces that don't follow physical laws. Consciousness is more flexible than it seems, capable of various configurations of self and space. Consciousness is sometimes described using the metaphor of a stream, William James's famous stream of consciousness. It flows continuously, carrying contents that change from moment to moment but within an underlying continuity. You can't step in the same conscious moment twice, yet it's the same stream. This metaphor captures something true about consciousness, its fluidity, its constant change, its paradoxical combination of continuity and flux. Right now, your stream of consciousness is flowing from waking towards sleep, its contents changing, thoughts becoming slower, imagery more prominent, sensations of drowsiness increasing. The stream's current is carrying you gently toward sleep's waterfall, that moment where the stream tips over the edge into a different kind of flow, the consciousness of dreams or deep sleep. You don't need to swim upstream or control the current. Just float, trust the water to carry you where you need to go. Recent theories suggest consciousness might not be needed for many sophisticated behaviors and decisions. Studies show brain activity predicting decisions seconds before conscious awareness of having decided, implying the unconscious brain has already chosen, and consciousness is just becoming aware of it. This challenges our intuition that consciousness is in charge, suggesting instead that consciousness might be more of a narrator, observing and rationalizing decisions made by unconscious processes. Whether this diminishes the importance of consciousness is debatable. Perhaps being the narrator is itself crucial, creating coherent selfhood and meaning even if consciousness isn't always the prime mover. Either way, right now you can release the illusion of control, recognizing that deeper processes are guiding you towards sleep. Your conscious will doesn't need to force relaxation. Your biology knows how to sleep, and consciousness can simply ride along, narrating the journey gently until narration itself fades into silence. The phenomenon of inattentional blindness shows how consciousness can completely miss obvious things when attention is engaged elsewhere. In famous experiments, people watching a video of people passing basketballs often fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. Consciousness is so focused on counting passes that the gorilla, despite being clearly visible, never enters awareness. This demonstrates the severe limits of conscious attention and the difference between sensory input. The gorilla is on your retina and conscious perception. You don't see the gorilla. Right now, there are likely things in your environment you're not consciously perceiving. The detailed texture of your sheets, the specific tone of ambient sound, the feeling of air on your skin. These exist in the sensory background, unattended by consciousness. As you drift deeper, even fewer things reach conscious awareness, attention narrowing until only the most salient stimuli register, consciousness withdrawing from the external world into internal spaces. Consciousness and memory are intimately linked. You're conscious of the present moment, but that moment immediately becomes memory, and much of what you're conscious of includes memories. When you see a dog, you're conscious not just of sensory features but of the accumulated meaning dog carries from past experience. Consciousness is always partly remembering, contextualizing the present with the past. People with severe memory disorders like anterograde amnesia, unable to form new memories, have severely disrupted consciousness. They live in a perpetual present, each moment isolated from the last. This shows how consciousness depends on memory to create continuity. Right now, you're conscious of these words, but also of the fact that you've been listening for a while, that you're trying to fall asleep, memories and present awareness woven together. As sleep comes, memory formation decreases, creating the amnesia of sleep. You'll spend hours in altered consciousness but remember little of it, experiencing a continuous present that leaves no trace. The question of animal consciousness becomes especially interesting with creatures very different from us. Octopuses, for instance, have complex nervous systems but distributed differently. 2/3 of their neurons are in their arms, not their central brain. Each arm has significant autonomy, able to solve problems independently. Is an octopus's consciousness unified like ours, or more distributed? Do the arms have their own awareness? We can't know what it's like to be an octopus, but the question highlights how consciousness might take very different forms than human awareness. On Earth alone, consciousness has likely evolved independently in multiple lineages: vertebrates, cephalopods, possibly insects, each time creating something different, awareness tailored to different bodies and environments. Your consciousness is the human version, primate-shaped, but it's one variation on a vast theme. As you rest, you participate in something larger: the universe's experimentation with consciousness, trying endless forms including yours, each one precious and unrepeatable. Take a moment to notice where you are now. Your breathing is probably very slow and deep. Your body feels heavy, maybe even distant, as if it's already partway into sleep while awareness lingers gently at the surface. This is a beautiful state, the threshold, the doorway. You don't need to stay fully awake. If you've already drifted into light sleep and these words are reaching you only faintly, that's wonderful. If you're still here, still listening, still aware, that's wonderful too. There's no wrong way to be in this moment. The facts continue, soft, steady, requiring nothing from you. They're here like stars are here in the night sky, shining whether or not anyone watches. You can simply exist alongside them, resting, drifting, letting consciousness do whatever it naturally does. You're safe. You're exactly where you should be. Consciousness exhibits what's called intentionality. It is always about something, always directed toward objects or contents. You're conscious of the room, of these words, of your tiredness. Consciousness isn't empty but always has content. Philosophers debate whether consciousness could exist without content, as pure awareness with nothing in it. Some meditative traditions claim to experience this, consciousness aware of itself without being about anything else. But normally, waking consciousness is intensely intentional, constantly directed outward or inward at thoughts and sensations. As you drift toward sleep, intentionality might soften, consciousness becoming less focused on specific contents, more diffuse, eventually perhaps touching something like contentless awareness in deep sleep, though you won't remember it. The directedness of consciousness is relaxing, no longer searching or focusing, simply present without specific targets, ambient and soft as morning light before the sun fully rises. The hard problem of consciousness has inspired many proposed solutions. Integrated information theory suggests consciousness arises whenever a system integrates information in specific ways, existing on a continuum. Global workspace theory proposes consciousness is a broadcasting mechanism for information. Predictive processing frameworks suggest consciousness is the brain's best guess about reality, constantly updated. Quantum theories propose consciousness involves quantum effects in neural microtubules. Panpsychist views hold that consciousness is fundamental, existing at all levels of reality. Each theory captures something, but none fully explains why there's something it feels like to be you. Perhaps the hard problem will eventually be solved, or perhaps it marks a permanent limit of third-person science trying to explain first-person experience. Either way, you don't need answers tonight. You can rest in the question in the beautiful mystery of your own existence, of consciousness itself, of the universe somehow looking back at itself through your eyes before those eyes close for sleep. Consciousness can expand or contract in its scope. Sometimes consciousness feels vast, walking in nature, looking at stars, moments of insight where everything seems to connect. Other times it feels narrow, focused on pain, anxiety, or a demanding task. This elasticity is one of consciousness's qualities, its ability to zoom in or out, to be broad or concentrated. Meditation and mindfulness practices often aim to expand consciousness, creating more spacious awareness that can hold discomfort without being overwhelmed by it. Right now, as you rest, consciousness might feel like it's contracting, narrowing down toward a point before sleep, the world growing distant and small. Or it might feel expansive, your awareness diffuse and unbounded, no sharp edges to the self. Either direction is fine. Consciousness finding the configuration it needs for this transition, adjusting its scope and scale, eventually narrowing to almost nothing in deep sleep or expanding into dream's infinite inner spaces. The strange phenomenon of lucid dreaming raises fascinating questions. If you can be conscious that you're dreaming while still dreaming, what does this say about consciousness? Some researchers see lucid dreaming as a hybrid state, aspects of waking consciousness reactivating during REM sleep. Brain scans of lucid dreamers show increased activity in prefrontal regions normally offline during dreams, suggesting the re-engagement of self-awareness and executive function. For millennia, spiritual traditions have valued lucid dreaming as a practice ground for exploring consciousness, for recognizing the dreamlike nature of waking reality. Whether you dream lucidly tonight or not, Your consciousness will journey through sleep's territories, sometimes aware in dreams, sometimes deeply unconscious, each state revealing different facets of what consciousness can be. The frontier of sleep is vast and strange, and your consciousness is preparing now to explore it, to discover what awaits in those inner territories visited every night yet forever mysterious. Consciousness seems to be highly plastic and changeable. Brain injuries, drugs, meditation, age, emotion, all can profoundly alter conscious experience. This plasticity is hopeful. It means consciousness can heal, can grow, can transform. People with depression can recover, experiencing consciousness becoming brighter, less oppressive. People with chronic pain can learn to change their relationship with pain, altering how suffering enters consciousness. Your consciousness isn't fixed but constantly being reshaped by experience, practice, and the brain's own adaptive processes. Right now, it's being shaped by relaxation, by soothing words and comfortable darkness, by the intention to sleep. These influences work gently, gradually shifting consciousness towards sleep's territory. And tomorrow, waking consciousness will reshape itself again, emerging fresh from sleep's restoration. Throughout your life, consciousness continues evolving and you're always participant in that evolution, shaping awareness through how you direct attention, what you practice, what you expose yourself to. Tonight, you're practicing letting go, and consciousness is learning that too. The question of whether consciousness survives death aside, consciousness definitely changes near death. People who have been resuscitated after cardiac arrest sometimes report near-death experiences, feelings of peace, seeing lights or deceased loved ones, out-of-body experiences, life reviews. Whether these are glimpses of an afterlife or the brain's final experiences remains debated. What's clear is that consciousness persists longer than often assumed. Awareness can continue briefly even as the body shuts down, the brain's last activity creating final experiences. But you don't need to think about death now. You're alive, conscious, preparing for sleep. Not death but death's gentle cousin, a nightly practice in letting go, in trusting that consciousness will return. Sleep is a little death, as some poets have called it, but always followed by resurrection, by the return of awareness with morning's light. Let yourself practice that small surrender now, knowing that awareness will be here tomorrow, that this nightly disappearance is always temporary, always safe. Consciousness includes not just what you're aware of but the feeling of knowing, metacognitive experiences like certainty, confusion, familiarity. When you remember someone's name, there's the name itself in consciousness, but also the feeling that this is correct. When you struggle to remember, you have the feeling of it being on the tip of your tongue. These metacognitive feelings color conscious experience, providing a sense of confidence or uncertainty, familiarity or novelty. Right now, your consciousness might include feelings of increasing vagueness, the sense that thoughts are slipping away, that holding onto ideas requires effort. These feelings are part of consciousness too, awareness of awareness's own state, the mind sensing itself changing, noting its own increasing tendency toward sleep. These metacognitive signals guide behavior, telling you it's time to stop trying to think clearly, time to surrender to sleep's pull, time to let the clarity of waking consciousness blur into something softer. The philosopher David Chalmers, who formulated the hard problem, distinguishes between easy problems and the hard problem of consciousness. Easy problems include explaining how the brain processes information, integrates sensory data, controls behavior, all things that seem explainable through neuroscience even if we haven't fully explained them yet. The hard problem is why any of this feels like something, why consciousness has qualitative character. Explaining the mechanisms of vision doesn't explain why seeing is an experience with a particular feel to it. Most neuroscientists focus on the easy problems, making remarkable progress in understanding brain function. But the hard problem remains, perhaps forever beyond reach of objective methods. As you rest, you embody the hard problem. You are the mystery of consciousness, the inexplicable fact that the universe becomes experience, that matter knows itself. You don't need to solve yourself. You can simply be this beautiful mystery, drifting softly toward sleep. Consciousness is energy expensive, which is one reason the brain has evolved to automate as much as possible. Skilled actions, driving a familiar route, typing, playing a learned piece of music, can occur with minimal consciousness, freeing awareness for other things. Learning moves things from conscious to unconscious processing, from effortful attention to automatic execution. This efficiency is crucial. If you had to consciously control every muscle movement, every breath, consciousness would be overwhelmed. So most of what you do happens in the darkness below awareness, consciousness freed to focus on the novel and important. Right now, you don't need to consciously control your breathing, your heartbeat, your descent into sleep. These can happen automatically, your unconscious systems handling everything while consciousness gently releases its role, stepping back, allowing the body's ancient wisdom to guide you into rest. Consciousness can afford to let go because unconscious processes are trustworthy, capable, endlessly working in the background. Your consciousness right now is unique in all the universe. The specific combination of your thoughts, sensations, memories, personality traits, emotional states creates an experience of this moment that has never existed before and will never exist again in quite this form. Even tomorrow when you wake, your consciousness will be slightly different, shaped by tonight's sleep and tomorrow's experiences. Each moment of consciousness is unrepeatable, precious for its very transience. As you drift now, you might appreciate this. The particular quality of awareness you have right now, tired and peaceful, listening to these words in the darkness, the specific texture of this moment's consciousness. It will change, will transform into sleep's consciousness, will eventually wake into tomorrow's awareness, but right now it's exactly this, and this is enough. You are consciousness taking a particular form at a particular moment in the universe's unfolding, and that's beautiful. And finally, perhaps the most important thing to know about consciousness is that it returns. Every morning after hours of absence or transformation in sleep, consciousness comes back, awareness resurfaces, the sense of self reconstructs itself, the world reappears. This daily return is so reliable we rarely marvel at it, but it's extraordinary. That consciousness can disappear and then come back, that the flame of awareness can go out and be rekindled, that every morning you wake up as yourself again. Right now, you're preparing for that temporary absence, that nightly journey into sleep's other world. And you can take this final fact with you into the dark. That consciousness returns. That awareness is resilient, that you will wake again. Sleep is safe because waking is certain. So you can let go completely, surrender fully, knowing that awareness will be here tomorrow morning, and so will you. Sweet dreams, peaceful rest, gentle consciousness. Let yourself sleep now. You've done beautifully. Everything is exactly as it should be. And so we've journeyed together through 100 facts about consciousness and awareness, though perhaps you've drifted beyond counting now, beyond tracking, beyond needing to hold onto any of it. That's exactly right. These facts were never meant to be remembered, but simply to guide you gently from waking awareness toward sleep's different consciousness, like stones marking a path through twilight forest, bringing you at last to rest. Consciousness, this mystery we've explored together, is perhaps the deepest wonder of existence. That matter somehow becomes mind, that neurons firing in the dark create the light of awareness, that the universe looks at itself through your eyes and mine, through every conscious being scattered across this planet. It's astonishing. Scientists may one day solve the easy problems, may fully map the mechanisms of brain and mind. But the hard problem, the question of why consciousness feels like something, may remain forever. Not a failure of understanding, but perhaps consciousness's essential nature, to be inexplicable from the outside, knowable only from within. Tonight, your consciousness has walked with me through neuroscience and philosophy, through brain structures and thought experiments, through questions ancient and modern. We've considered how consciousness arises from billions of neurons dancing in electrochemical patterns. We've explored its layers and levels, from basic awareness to meta-consciousness. We've thought about how it changes, in meditation, in sleep, across the lifespan. We've wondered about the consciousness of animals, of machines, of the universe itself. We've encountered the binding problem and the hard problem, the explanatory gap and the mystery of qualia. And through it all, your consciousness has been the medium of this exploration, awareness contemplating itself, consciousness wondering at its own existence. But now the time for wondering is done. The questions can rest. The mysteries can simply be mysteries, held gently in the darkness like seeds waiting for spring. Your consciousness doesn't need to understand itself tonight. It only needs to transform, to shift from waking into sleep's healing darkness, to give your brain and body the restoration they need. As you lie here now, perhaps already mostly asleep, perhaps still faintly aware of these final words, know that you're participating in something every conscious being does. This nightly surrender, this letting go into sleep. Across the world, billions of humans are sleeping or preparing for sleep, and with them countless other conscious creatures, mammals dreaming in dens and nests, birds sleeping in trees, even the simpler consciousnesses of insects and fish entering their own rest states. All of us conscious beings sharing this nightly rhythm, awareness dimming and brightening with the sun's cycle, consciousness breathing in and out like the universe itself. Thank you for spending this time here, in this quiet corner of the internet where science becomes lullaby, where facts become dreams. Thank you for letting me guide you on this journey through the nature of consciousness. I hope you found some peace here, some comfort, some gentle wonder to carry into sleep. If you enjoyed this exploration, consider subscribing to Sleepy Science for more journeys like this one, through space and time, through biology and physics, through all the beautiful mysteries science reveals. Leave a like if this helped you relax. And maybe share this with someone else who struggles to quiet their mind at night, someone who might find peace in these scientific lullabies. But all of that can wait. Right now, there's only sleep. Your consciousness has done its work for today, all the perceiving and thinking and deciding and wondering. It can rest now. You can rest now. Let the last threads of awareness dissolve like sugar in water, sweetening the darkness. Let your breathing deepen. Let your thoughts become dreams. Let consciousness transform into whatever it becomes when you sleep, whether vivid dreams or deep peace or simply absence. The universe is here, all around you, vast and ancient and mysterious. And somewhere in that universe consciousness arose, looked around, wondered why. You are that consciousness. You are the universe knowing itself. And right now you are resting as consciousness must rest, as even awareness needs to sleep. So close your eyes if they're not already closed. Feel the weight of your body completely supported. Notice the darkness, soft and safe, and let go. Let everything go. Consciousness will take care of itself from here, guiding you through the territories of sleep, bringing you safely to morning. Sleep well, dream softly. And when consciousness returns with tomorrow's light, may you wake gently, refreshed, ready for another day of being aware, being alive, being the universe's way of experiencing itself. Good night.